exciting week in world and especially local politics, and in our region, of course, the massive historical changes in Zimbabwe, and everyone waiting to see what's going to happen. So we will take a quick look at Zimbabwe before we talk about what's happening in our own country in the month ahead, which is an exciting enough month, and the month of December for the rest of us. So, starting with what's going on in Zimbabwe from the astrological point of view. Astrologically, we've seen the important effects of the planet Uranus over the last 2 years in the charts of Jacob Zuma and Pravin Gordhan. And if you've watched this show, you've seen me talk about that over the last 2 years as the battle between those two Aries giants played out. And Uranus was taking, its once a century tour through the sign of Aries, still is, and was dealing with their particular shared birth date over the course of that time. Well, Zimbabwe itself is also born in the month of Aries, 18th of April, and that means that sooner or later something comes along to cause massive upheavals or sudden changes or things like that. And that's what exactly has been going on in Zimbabwe pretty much as we speak, and it's kind of still only the beginning. So the results of that we're seeing now, we will still see further changes a lot over the course of the next year. The fact that they're talking about having elections and the new president will have to institute some changes and policies immediately if he's to benefit from the support of the people in the change that's happening at the moment. And there's still a lot more change with respect to the people shown in their chart. In astrology, we have a special place in the chart to represent, especially when those oppose the president, as they have been in Zimbabwe for some time, and especially, of course, in the last week, we finally got to see it. Well, that process that began in the streets of Harare is by no means over, and it's likely that it's given local activists fresh energy and fresh impetus. Obviously, the local opposition parties in Zimbabwe also fresh impetus, and we'll see some other kind of political revival there, especially since we might see a few extra parties join the fray. Probably haven't seen the last of some people from ZANU-PF who will have been disaffected or even arrested by the changes that have happened in the last week. So Zimbabwe's still a lot more change to go, but it is worth saying that despite the worthy fears that the next president might not be that much different than the last one in Zimbabwe, there are reasons for people to think about that. The fact remains that the changes both at the state and populace level, the experience of being in Zimbabwe over the course of the next year is only beginning. So Zimbabwe is going to get a lot of change, and this is a real opportunity for them to build a new country for themselves again. But it's obviously not going to be easy, and from astrology's point of view, when you're operating under that kind of influence, things are changing all the time, and unexpected developments continue to happen, as we saw in the whole Zuma-Gordhan battle until its end, and that all is just beginning for Zimbabwe. So I'll probably get to talk more about that next year when we're looking at the year going by and what's happening there and here, because of the important connection it has to us. Of course, much more significant to us is the ANC Elective Conference that is going to happen later in December, in the middle of December, and the election of a new president of the ANC and inevitable president of the country. I said at the beginning of the year that the race will be Dlamini Zuma's for much of the year, and then it'll turn to Ramaphosa, and that is pretty much what seems to have happened. And the chart continues to favor Ramaphosa fairly strongly. Yet the situation is changing. The outcome of the elective conference, which here, like in other analysis, most favors Ramaphosa out of the two, but doesn't completely disfavor her. Worth mentioning, there's nothing blocking or threatening her from her chart's point of view. whatever the outcome is, it still looks fairly likely that this is going to lead to a split in the ANC. Or obviously at the very least, very significant changes in the party, which would be a diminishment of its power and size, but that is still very likely to go in the direction of a split. It might not be a dramatic chair throwing split that happens, because sometimes the ANC has the ability to contain that and live up to its original image of doing things slowly and in a kind of processed manner, which they often try and do. So maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe they'll succeed in doing that. But over the course, certainly of the next few months, we are going to see splitting, or at the very least, splitting off of, making the party smaller. Not necessarily new parties, but things are splitting apart. The fact is that in the ANC's own chart, the planet Uranus has also been operating very strongly. It's on one of its major cycles that says a creation of the identity. So the ANC will succeed in adjusting its identity, but it will be at a high price. It continues to look like it's not going to be as successful as usual in the 2019 elections. We'll have plenty more to say about that next year and obviously the year after. But this is the ball that starts rolling in the months ahead. So December sets the tone, and whoever actually wins, although the odds remain with Ramaphosa, that it starts the pulling apart of the party. And in looking at South Africa's own astrological chart, we can see the same kind of influences again, the same influences that influence the ANC chart, showing a reassessment, a shift of identity in some way. And interestingly enough, one of the same ones that we see in Zimbabwe's chart, not the Aries influence that sees the country actually change as it is there, but a shift in the people. And I think the important thing about what the chart is saying about the ANC is the loss of support amongst the people. So no matter what is actually happening in the party, the splitting in some form or other, the bigger problem remains that the people are shifting and the population have shifted, and there's also another generation coming increasingly into play that's going to be voting in the next election always. And so that's also what's going to shift their support, because just like we see in Zimbabwe, the people of South Africa are shown as at the beginning of changes and making changes happen. So in parallel with what's happening with the government, which means that even if worst case scenario, the ANC government continues to pillage and be captured and do all of those kind of things in the year ahead, the way that things are shifting amongst the people of South Africa still gives us the possibility of effecting significant change in this country, like Zimbabwe, at some cost, which of course we've already seen. So exciting times we do live in. We can see that kind of history unfolding before our eyes, but one step at a time. Let's start with that elective conference, see the ANC change its leadership, and within a couple of months, still probably the president of the country. There are other things happening, of course, in the country as well, related to what happens in the government. It still looks like there are more secrets to be had, or more consequences of secrets coming out, and especially related to money, which is part of what they have been related to all about. The financial situation is not looking good in South Africa over the next month. It looks a little intense and serious, meaning you're going to have to hang on to what you've got for a while and just be careful with that. But that's going to be true for the country as well. It's a difficult month financially, and that's obviously going to increase as we've heard. But perhaps next year might turn out to be a little bit different in that regard, as we'll see when we have a look at that next month. Other kind of secrets also happen. There seem to be things happening behind the scenes that are going to eventually bring activism or other changes in the land and perhaps in the governing party that will help bring further change during the course of next year. So things are afoot, and December is when those things are being put into place. We'll talk about that in January when we talk about the year ahead for 2018. So be sure to watch in the middle of January. I'll mention that again over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see more of what's happening at that time. And more details are, of course, also in the book that I've just released, that also gives more details about things happening over the year ahead. So check that out at your bookstore or get it on the page on Facebook. You can order it right there. So then, having seen the continuing ongoing shakings of the land, let's talk a little bit about what's happening to you and me. For the cardinal signs, that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, this is a month when there's opportunities to learn new things, do new things, and have new kinds of fun. You do need to be careful not to spend too much money doing that, because it does look like it could be quite a challenging time for you cardinal signs. And similarly, you might not be able to rely on friends like you'd like to, but other people close to you do seem to be the source of all sorts of important things that are helpful along the way. For Aries, well, you're the one who's going to have all the bright ideas this month. So this is a great opportunity to really explore new things that catch your fancy or give you back a little bit of the passion in your life. That's actually necessary at the moment for you. You also need to spend more time doing what you really want to do and making sure you're not being too influenced by the people around you. At the very least, they can't quite be relied on right now. It's also not a great time to be working with groups of other people or expecting teams to benefit you or go along with you. So rather be doing your own thing or focusing on being cooperative rather than trying to influence the team in any kind of a way. It's good to take a back seat with respect to other people. Nevertheless, the ones that are closest to you and things that you love are going to be providing great sources of new benefits in your life. And this is the time for you, more than anyone else, to really start changing your ideas and ideals, making things happen in an altogether new way. Cancerians are one of the signs that are financially challenged this month, so you've got to be a little bit careful that you're not spending too much money on other people, because that really seems to be what the challenge is all about. If you make sure that it's on things that are valuable to you and are practical and necessary for you and your family and so on, that's going to make sure that you don't push yourself into any unnecessary financial challenges. Close relationships are going to be productive of all sorts of important things for you. So this is a time to nurture those relationships. Not only nurture the people, but actually nurture the relationships around you. It can seem to be quite a serious time emotionally, and perhaps as you're leading up to the holiday season, there's a little bit too much on your plate, and use the coming holiday season and change of the year and all of that to really set a new attitude to many things that are happening in your life. Benefit from what's coming at you rather than letting things sit on your shoulders. For Librans, well, Librans are going to have to kind of tie up some loose ends, finish unfinished business, and deal with a few things that haven't been dealt with over the course of this year. They're probably just ordinary things you kind of swept under the carpet or forgot about or put on the side in some way. Now is the time to do this. It is important in your relationships to be asserting what you want. You need to at the very least be saying what your needs and desires are in your relationship at this time, because acting behind the scenes is going to get you into all sorts of difficulties. Rather just talk about it, say it, and actually this is an opportunity to bring new shared passions into your relationship. Passion itself is a great thing to have in a relationship, and shared passions will give you an opportunity to reconnect in all sorts of new ways in your relationship and clean out all the baggage that you've been carrying along with you. Capricorn, this is really the financial squeeze month for you. You're going to have to bite the bullet. You've probably been expecting this for a while, and it's not going to go on too much longer after this. So really, this is the month to take hold and be careful. It's a difficult month to do that because it's often such an expensive month. The good news is you still seem to be generating money, or the ability to generate money, the work itself, all of those things are looking good. It just doesn't look like that money is staying around. There's new expenses, there's hidden expenses, and there's old expenses. They're all coming at you in one time. It's not only about expenses though, there are other things that you kind of need to pay off and discharge. Time to put some old bad habits behind you, not only because it's December, because actually your chart implies that you're also carrying too much of an old load. Now is the time to put that aside and, like the other cardinal signs, bring some new ideas and possibilities into your life. This is the time. For the fixed signs, that's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this is a month about your relationships. It's about the stuff that you've got to do for other people and actually sorting out what you should be doing for yourself. Separating that out a little bit, but not to the extent where you're isolating yourself at all. This is also a month for old connections and new connections to be reconnected. So it sounds like you're going to have a really fun holiday season. Taurus, well, although you are having fun in your relationships and things are looking good that way, it does look like you're a little bit too caught up in your partner's or someone else's stuff. You could be losing or making some unnecessary sacrifices. Things could actually be taking a bit of a toll in your own life, and you could change that by either acting a little bit more selfishly at the moment or dealing with something that you've been avoiding or neglecting or just not really trusting yourself about. This is the time to kind of take it back and get the chance to wrap up and tie up some of your own stuff. You're being held back in some ways. Nevertheless, relationships continue to be a great source of balance in your life if you concentrate on the relationship itself and what's good about it. Put energy back into that, and then rather than dealing with your partner stuff, you're dealing with growing the relationship itself. Leos are also dealing with friends and connections far and wide. You know, this is really a great time for you to travel if you get the opportunity during the holiday month, because far and wide is best done by actually going there, the best reason to actually travel. Nevertheless, whatever you're going to do, you really need to put yourself right out there. This is a time to advance your own interests in every way. Leos usually love entertaining and partying, and this is the time to be that kind of center of attention. People always think Leos are attention seekers, but it's really that you like to be like the sun in the center of the room, the source of everyone's warmth and pleasure, and they're all happy because they're in the sun. So that's the vibe that really lets you have a great month for entertaining, for reconnecting, but also on a more serious note, because you're in a strong position this month, it's a great opportunity to sort out a few things once and for all. Behind the scenes business can be completed so you can go forward. A whole new year is just about around the corner. Scorpios, well, you're always best when you're behind the scenes, and if you get a chance to do that, that's great. But it looks like it's a little bit of a torn between two paths month for you. There's an opportunity for you to put your best foot forward and really put yourself out there. That really means taking charge and making something happen rather than standing behind the scenes and influencing it from there. But equally, as ever, you can still do it that way very well. What you do need to do is be aware that not everyone around you is supportive at this time, and some of the help that you've been reliant on might not be there for you. So rather than getting angry about it or feeling sorry for yourself or whatever, those kind of things in astrology mean it's really just telling you to focus on yourself and rely on yourself. It's just that other people obviously have their stuff to do. Also important though is that it's an opportunity to follow some of your own ideas and ideals, and that's why it's something that you'd rather do yourself. So go for it. And for Aquarians, well, your relationships are also very important at the moment, and that's all the people around you. There is some family stuff that you're probably caught up in, and that looks like it's to do with siblings or people at your own kind of level in the family, cousins, but can also just be other people around you. It really looks like at this time you are still reliant on or connected to some people around you. this is also an opportunity for you also to reach out to others who might need something, or you might be able to help in some way. You're getting into a stronger and a stronger position, and actually there's a chance for you to have a little bit of influence and make something work out for someone or for a group of people at the moment. And there's nothing better that Aquarians like to do than that. That will also give you a great sense of balance, because the world has been kind to you of late. For the mutable signs, that's Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, it looks like it's the perfect holiday season month for you. Your relationships are shown as prominent and balanced in your life at this time. Matters of your domestic life are also able to receive your attention, and that's where we want to put our attention at this time of the year. And even work seems to be going quite well, even though it's that time to start wrapping things up. Could everything be so rosy? Well, starting with Geminis, it does look like your relationships are occupying a lot of your space and attention at the moment. That is a good thing. It can be that, like other people around the zodiac this month, there could be a little bit too much effect of another person on you. That's not necessarily in your most personal relationship. It could also be a business partnership or a significant friend or some other significant person like that. So be careful that you're not in the wake of someone else because you're kind of going with the flow or wanting to keep somebody happy just because of friendship reasons. So all those are the wrong reasons at this particular time. Your relationships actually stand a chance to be good because they're showing what's prominent in your chart, as long as you just speak up and speak clearly and make sure that it's not just about whatever else is happening for the other person. Virgos are not done with the year yet. You are, of course, as busy as you ever are, and it does seem a little bit thankless for you. There's a strong focus on your working area at the moment, and that could be affecting your personal life, or more especially your domestic life at this particular time. The point really seems to be here that you're on an endless checklist, to-do list that's really getting nowhere, or that the work is too scattered in some way. That's not your style. So just focus on one or two things and focus on what's important. That's going to work for you much better. This is also a great time to be planning some bigger ideas. The way for you to break out and get ready for the new year is really to stretch yourself in some way. Get out of the rut that you've been in. It's almost like you've been paying too much attention to detail, or you've actually just had too much trivial stuff on the go and you need to think bigger. For you, next year is going to be about thinking bigger, and December is the month for you to start that. For Sagittarians, who usually are the ones who are thinking big, quite the opposite is true. It's really time to sit back a little bit and consolidate. You're in a strong position this month. It's a great month for a birthday, and you're going to actually feel a whole shift after your birthday, that you really are into a new year and you're feeling strong and ready about it. But it's so important, more than usual, showing in your chart at this time, that you actually need to sit down and relax before that happens. You actually need to pull yourself back together and consolidate and contain those energies, because next year is going to be demanding quite a lot from you. It's also time to finish some unfinished business. I've said it a few times to you in the last few months. There are things that are trailing along that are not complete, that you need to maybe wrap up or put behind you once and for all, just give up on. But moving ahead is something that you do so well. You don't want anything pulling you back. So time to cut and go. And for Pisces, it's also a great time to be having a festive season, because this is a month for you to be sitting, enjoying your domestic life and your personal life and your friends and family. Hopefully, life will allow you to be that restive, but it does look like, at the very least, the opportunities to quietly get on with what you need to get on with, which might be a way of getting to that quiet place for you. It does look like you're going to be making some sacrifices around your domestic life at this time. They might seem necessary sacrifices, but you've got to be very, very careful that that doesn't lead you to a situation where you feel dissatisfied because none of what you wanted is happening. Sacrifice is natural to you, and you do tend to do it a little bit too often. belongs better in our spiritual lives than in our personal lives. So keep an eye on yourself with regards to that. But, sometimes for the pleasures of home and comfort, it's worth giving up a few things. So, of course, we are almost ready for 2018 and what's going to be going on in the year ahead. You're going to see more about that in January. And if you've got a copy of the book, you've seen more about that already for yourself and for the country. You can get the book on the Facebook page, click the link and order it directly from Loot. You'll also find out whatever's going on with the show and even catch up on old episodes if you've managed to miss a few along the way. See you next week.